Conversations here in Davos, and joining us now is Johan Aurik of Kearney. Thank you very much for joining us on CNBC TV 18. It's good to have you back on the channel after we last saw you in India.
Yes.
Before I talk to you about India, let me start by asking you about Theresa May and what's happening in the UK. You know, conversations here have been dominated by Donald Trump in the US,
Yes.
and Brexit has sort of fallen off the radar, but my suspicion is that it's going to come right back on the radar, given the fact that you've now got this possibility of a hard Brexit up in centre, and with London being at the centre of this conversation with banks saying, look, if you don't give us passporting rights and so on and so forth, we're going to move out.
Well, you remember Donald Trump, I think, called him being elected Brexit plus or something like that, wasn't it?
Plus.
And exactly, and that's why also here at Davos, that's the first conversation. There's no doubt about it, because it's the most powerful country in the world, and so there's every reason to do that. The conversation is still very much about Brexit too. Make no mistake about that. The general notion that people are talking about is the impact of populism on the world and what it means. And people look with a high degree of anxiety what's ahead in the months with elections in France, in Germany, and many more, by the way. So that's certainly dominating the debate here. But Brexit certainly came back. Today, Theresa May gave a speech here in Davos. Yesterday, she gave the speech in the UK. She tried to be reasonable, that was her message, towards the European countries that London needs to negotiate with, the 27. So she tried to be reasonable, but she also has been very, very clear where she stands on this. And where she stands is a hard, as is known, a hard Brexit. So what does that mean?
Market,
What does that mean? It means the willingness, that's the essence of it, I think. The willingness to agree to some amount of economic pain in order to gain more control. That's the essence of what the whole debate is about.
But the question is, how much threshold will the government have to absorb pain?
We don't really know, is the answer. In a democracy, there's a limit to that, as we all know. Every politician wants to, and also needs to, be re-elected. So there's always a limit to that. And the dictatorship has, in that sense, more freedom.
But you know, and again, you know, the negotiations are going to run over at least 2 years or so. But
or maybe even more.
Or maybe even longer.
Yeah.
Maybe even longer. But you know, given what she is saying, and given the fact that she's sticking to the script, so to speak, and it is likely to be a hard Brexit, do you see a flight of capital outside the UK, and specifically out of London?
Yes, and it's already happening. This week, several banks announced that they are planning already to move jobs out of London, whether they go to Paris or to Frankfurt or even to New York. That's a secondary issue. And virtually all of them, about 5 or 6, have already announced that. And that's the beginning of it. And that was no surprise, because it was already clear that, for instance, the famous passporting rights, so the ability to trade European bonds and etc., that was going to be limited. So this was expected, and that has indeed been announced. And we fear, and many people fear, that there will be more. So there will really be economic pain. There's no doubt about that. The degree is the question.
Is the question.
Yeah.
You know, so we've talked about the UK. Let's talk about the US, because I think everyone's trying to figure out how the US is going to change, what policies are going to go. Less regulation seems pretty much a certainty.
Yeah.
You know, but how business-friendly is the Trump administration really going to be? Is it going to be able to unleash the animal spirits? What's your own take? And what is it that you're picking up in your conversation with CEOs here?
That is what everyone is talking about. And the real answer is no one really knows. And the real answer is maybe even Donald Trump really knows. But even that we don't know, do we? So there's a lot of question marks here. And so any conversation always ends with that, like, we don't really know, do we? So we need to be careful what we say. This is all speculation, and this is all what we think, perhaps, and that's it. The consensus that I'm picking up here around the various rooms is that, economically speaking, domestic economically speaking, there seems to be ground. Most are carefully optimistic, certainly for the next years, because he has announced a program to finally fix infrastructure and to invest in that. and he has a majority in Congress, so that can be done. Tax reform is generally agreed by the Republican Party, so that might also take place. I think there's ground, and most businesses expect that certainly over the next years, you will see that. For the rest, particularly geopolitically, and when it gets to trade, there are a lot of questions out there, and a lot of worries and anxiety out there. So it's a bit of a double picture.